Ladies and gentlemen, we move on to our second presentation, and this is going to be on the topic Airline Partnerships as a Catalyst of Growth for African Carriers. Partnership as a Catalyst for Growth. To deliver this presentation is Mr. Arvind Chandrasekhar, Head of Network and Fleet Management, Lufthansa Consulting. So if Arvind is here, please, let's welcome him with a round of applause, ladies and gentlemen.
Am I audible? All right. This is actually an excellent point in the agenda to have this topic because it builds on many of the themes that we've been discussing this morning. So hopefully you'll find me pulling on some of those threads and channeling it in the direction of a discussion of commercial partnerships. But before we go there, I want to talk about this handsome guy here. Who can tell me which animal this is? Anyone? Don't be shy. Yes. That's right, it's a mountain gorilla. It's a beautiful creature. That's a silverback, an adult male mountain gorilla. I want to give you 3 facts about mountain gorillas. The first fact, they are very social animals. They don't operate on a solo basis. They form families of 4 to 6 to 8 gorillas. And interestingly, in many of those troops or families, there's more than one adult male. There will be one alpha, but that alpha will tolerate and play nice with the other adult males who might be competition to him. Fact number 2, they are not territorial animals. They have a home range, that is their area of comfort based on food and security. But if another silverback comes into that area, again, they will play nice. So long as their immediate family is not being threatened, there will not be conflict. So they are not territorial in nature. And maybe you see where I'm going with this. If not, third fact, they do not mate for life. In the interest of developing the family, they have multiple partners over the course of their life, and they believe that allows for growth and diversification of risk in the troop. So if you think of those 3 points, right? They're very social animals that play nice even with potential competitors. They are not territorial in nature and are willing to tolerate others coming into their area so long as they're not a massive threat. And they have multiple partners in order to ensure growth of the family. If we think about that, maybe we as an airline community, as we think about partnerships, should be a bit more open-minded and be more like silverback gorillas on all of those dimensions. But why are we even having this discussion here today? Right? We've heard some of the numbers from the panelists earlier. Right? Essentially, Africa, for all of its growth that we've had in the last decade or 2, is still extremely fragmented in nature. We've heard the stats about there being 2 to 2.5% of the world traffic coming out of Africa. A shocking additional statistic is that it's 2% of traffic, but 15 to 17% of all the airlines in the world are registered in Africa. That's a hell of a lot of airlines, right? And in spite of having so many airlines, we still have the same kind of complaints whenever we meet at these conferences, which is you do not have enough direct connectivity between some of the major cities in Africa. It's extremely difficult to find convenient one-stop connections. Very often, you don't find those one-stop connections intra-Africa, and you have to go outside of Africa to make those connections. If you do find connections, you don't have frequencies. And on top of all of this, you have extremely high fares. So that begs the question, if we have such a large number of airlines in the continent, what's going on? Because clearly, many of these are fairly subscale airlines. They are not financially sustainable on their own, and they are not effectively addressing the connectivity needs of the continent. We spoke about that earlier as well in saying that scale is important, right? And having this long tail of subscale airlines is not really serving the continent the way it should be. That's where partnerships come in. Partnerships are not the one golden bullet or silver bullet to solve all of those problems, but they can help us go some way towards making that a bit more sustainable. And there are multiple ways in which partnerships can add value. The most obvious visible way is in terms of network reach, right? When you have a partnership with another airline, it allows you to have a footprint in a much larger market, one that you either do not want to serve or cannot serve yourself. That's the obvious one. Beyond that, ideally, you want to be able to put more bottoms in seats, right? By having better feed coming into your network through these partners. That increases your load factors, ideally. However, load factor is not the measure of success. Revenue and profitability is. So ideally, you want to be able to increase your load factors in a profitable manner. Third, there's an opportunity for cost efficiency through shared resources, shared initiatives. Again, this may not happen with every kind of partnership, but let's say you have a code share, right? You have the opportunity to perhaps share check-in counters and lounges. You might collaborate on ground handling, on maintenance. You might even go as far as having partnerships when it comes to sourcing and procurement. So depending on the nature of your partnership, there is a wide range of benefits that you can have to your bottom line as well. It's not just about a top line impact. In some cases, it enables market access. If you as an airline are blocked from a certain market because of bilaterals or certain regulatory concerns, partnering with a local airline, being able to put your marketing code on them, even if you cannot operate there, gives you some element of market access. And finally, at the end of the day, we are a customer business. So we want to ensure that we are delivering customer experience and a positive outcome for the ones who pay our bills in this industry. So especially when it comes to loyalty and being able to expand a frequent flyer program, there's a lot of value to be had there as well. And just to illustrate that a little bit, and looking at the first point, if you look at the expanded network reach, the CEO of Rwanda spoke earlier about the partnership with Qatar Airways, right? So if you take a look at the network that Rwanda operates on its own metal, right? And I just pulled out all destinations that are currently scheduled for 2025 across seasons. That had 23 operating destinations, Rwanda on its own metal. Once you add in the code share partners, that explodes, 93 additional destinations. So you're talking about your network footprint going up 5x as a result of being able to put in place the right partnerships. Now, this is a bit of a special case because Qatar is a bit of a special airline. So it may not be 5x for every partnership, but the principle is the same, which is it allows you that kind of scale. And allowing you that marketing scale means, exactly like Yvonne said earlier, that allows you to focus on doing the best that you can for your size, for your network, for your operational capabilities. Code shares are not the only way of partnering. Obviously, it's one of many. And what I've laid out here is essentially the spectrum of options that you might have if you're thinking about what kind of partnership you want to set up. There is no one-size-fits-all, and it's very much a function of what you want to achieve as an airline, what you are bringing to the table to a potential partner, and who that partner is. But broadly speaking, going from left to right, you have increasing complexity of setting that up, but also increasing value of what you can generate from that partnership. I'm not sure if everybody can see it all the way in the back, so I'll quickly just walk through what these are. We're starting with interlines on the left. Fairly straightforward to implement. You have standard SPA formats that you can put in place. Then code shares, which I guess most of us are familiar with. It allows for a little bit more optimization and collaboration than the interline. Then you come to the global alliances. It's mainly the big three alliances. Personally, I think that they are less relevant now than they might have been 10 or 15 years ago, but they are an important component of the partnership ecosystem in our industry. And then after that, there's a bit of a switch because the model changes. Now we're starting to talk about much deeper, much more meaningful partnerships or collaboration between the airlines. The first one that I have up there is equity partners. So where one airline is actually buying a stake in another airline. That is quite a commitment to make, right? That's like like getting married. It's not easy to unwind that partnership. But you're making a commitment that you have a future together, and you're going to work together on a broad range of areas to deliver value not just to the investing airline, not just to the recipient of the investment, but also to the airline that is investing. You have examples of this already in Africa. Ethiopian, for example, has a number of investments, and there will be more coming up, I'm sure. Moving beyond that, you have the joint ventures. And this is where you start to really see the value of deep collaboration, especially on the commercial side. If you have an immunized joint venture, that gives you so much more flexibility to be able to collaborate on capacity management, on pricing, and so on, and to really own a market together with your JV partner. This is a model that in the Northern Hemisphere is starting to get increasingly in pretty much every market over there. And it's not just about a Europe or North America thing. You have a lot of them in Asia as well. It's something that hasn't yet come to Africa, or at least not effectively enough. Again, I'm sure we're going to get there. And finally, you have the mergers and acquisitions, where you have one party more or less entirely taking over another one. And then there are different models by how you can run that, right? You can have a holding company, you can have them as independent companies, whatever. But the idea is there is where you start to gain immense value from being able to harmonize all of those airlines and be able to drive top-line benefits, bottom-line benefits, and become far more efficient operationally and far more profitable as an entity. Now, Alan was talking earlier about the fact that there needs to be consolidation in Africa. Absolutely, 100%. So while the easy solution for many of the partnership needs that we have today would be an interline or a code share, it's high time we start looking at what is on the right side of this spectrum. That is what is going to actually generate sustainable value for the future. And when I say sustainable, I don't mean environmentally sustainable, I mean as a business. Fundamentally, how do you have a financially sustainable airline industry which is going to make more than 90 cents on a dollar in the long term? That's where we need to get to, and I'm confident we will. And when we talk about, say, this new Air Afrique kind of concept, that's going to come from the right-hand side of the spectrum. That said, it's not an excuse to wait for years until the political will is there to set up something of that sort. We need to act now. And what that nature of action is will vary airline by airline. It's a function entirely of your scale, your ambition, and who you think would be the right partner for you. When you're thinking about that, I want to keep in mind three things, because the ecosystem is evolving. It's not static when you think about airline partnerships. The first, as I mentioned earlier, alliances are less relevant perhaps today than they were earlier. They're not really growing much. If I remember correctly, in the last 5 or 6 years, we've had 2 new additions to the airline alliances, one of which was in Africa, Royal Air Maroc. And you've had some of them leave alliances and some switch alliances because of acquisitions. But it's fairly stagnant. On the other hand, you have several airlines which have explicitly stated that they have no intention of joining an alliance. And they see far more value in just choosing bilateral relationships that will make sense for their markets and their ambitions. They're also focusing on their small niche operations, but absolutely cracking the model so they become regional champions. And Airlink is a great example of that, right? They have established themselves as absolutely the best airline in terms of density and reliability in Southern Africa. And you can see the impact of that. Pretty much every major airline flying into South Africa is a partner to them, independent of which alliances they are in. And that includes Star Alliance airlines, when there are 2 other Star Alliance members already in Africa. The second airline you see there on the second tail there is Air Serbia, very similar. Small airline, very niche, operating in the Balkans, but they have cracked the Balkans market. So any airline that wants to access and get some density over there wants to partner with Air Serbia. And there are several examples of this sort. So you don't need to be a part of a big alliance. What's important is market access with the right local champion. And any one of us here in this room could be that local champion if we choose to decide what our niche is and be absolutely the best possible partner for anyone else trying to access that market. So that's the first. The second is that market access is more important than the business model. In the last 10 years, you've seen an increasing number of what we would normally consider full-service carriers partnering with what we would consider low-cost carriers or value carriers. And that's because when you want to access a certain market, if the best carrier is a low-cost carrier in that market, and you are a full service carrier, you're shooting yourself in the foot by insisting that you want to only partner with someone who matches your business model. The first one up there is Indigo, right? Effectively a ULCC, 65% of the Indian domestic market. Their partners now include British Airways, Air France, KLM, Qantas, Turkish, and more, because they bring the market to these large airlines. And interestingly, they have a code share with Turkish, even though Air India is a fellow Star Alliance member. So again, the alliance memberships are what they are, but they're a bit of a legacy if market access is better achieved through another bilateral relationship. So again, why I'm saying that is because when we think about which partners would make sense for us in all of our airlines here, we need to think a little bit outside of the box. We do not need to go by legacy structures. We should instead be really tactical about saying which markets do we want to capture, who are we going to be a good partner with, and who will be the best bilateral partner for us to help us crack the markets that we have an interest in. The final point here is more about implementation, which is it's actually becoming easier to have these partnerships. And that's because you have new technology solutions that enable it. I'm sure many of you are familiar with virtual interlining, right? That is something that has taken off in a fairly decent way over the last decade. I'm simplifying it, but essentially it allows for more kind of plug-and-play partnerships. You have multiple providers who provide those platforms, and you can then choose to deploy your partnership and your partner schedules onto that platform, and they will do the connections for you in the system. So that kind of virtual interlining makes it that much easier to set up partnerships, reducing the friction even for small airlines to start to play the partnership game. And as we go forward, once you have NDC being more fully implemented, things like order management, ancillary management, and so on also become much easier across any two partner airlines that want to work together. So the technology is evolving in a way that will enable partnerships, and it's our responsibility to take advantage of that as much as possible and not necessarily wait to execute. All of this sounds very positive, but it's never as easy as it sounds, because there are always barriers, right? And the first one right up there is one that was mentioned several times earlier: aeropolitical, geopolitical, or just fundamentally political barriers, right? Especially when it comes to state-owned airlines. We've had these conversations several times when talking to airlines in the region. Partnering with another airline is seen as giving away some sort of control or giving away ambition, right? Why should somebody else fly a route when I can get a wide body and fly it myself, right? Sometimes there is that kind of thinking, and I think for all of us as professionals, we know that's not the rational way to think about it, but sometimes that's the situation we need to be able to lobby against and push against. So there are those kind of barriers that come in place. Arvind mentioned this morning that sometimes there's some self-sabotage as well, right? Some of us within the industry who should know better, who should be encouraging these kind of partnerships, tend to also argue against them when it goes back to the politicians. So that is certainly a big one. Secondly, sometimes pre-existing partnerships may restrict what you can do, especially if it's an equity partnership or you have certain exclusive partnerships. Your hands might be tied, right? So much as you would want to chase the best possible bilateral partnerships, you may need to be a little realistic about which ones will actually work and where you get more value, your existing partners or the potential new partners. Safety and compliance concerns. Safety is obviously non-negotiable for us as an industry, but very often, especially if you are a smaller airline trying to partner with a larger airline, they will want to ensure that you're ticking off all the boxes when it comes to safety and audits and so on. There's also often a lot of focus on financial compliance because they want to know that you will be a reliable partner to actually work with and that the money will flow as they expect. Finally, any other perceived risks more about execution. Will my partner airline actually be able to operate reliably, or will they keep canceling and causing issues? Will they be able to handle passenger irregularities? Will they be able to ensure a consistent onboard customer experience as agreed in our contract? These are some of the things that your partner airlines will want to discuss with you. So as you are heading into this, you need to ensure that you've got your ducks in a row, right? And you are absolutely prepared to be able to make the best possible case for yourself as an airline as well, heading into this kind of a partnership, because it takes two to tango, and you need to ensure that you're bringing as much into that relationship, and reliably so, as you would expect from your partner. So what does that mean now, right? How do we actually get going on this? as I said, the first step is just getting your house in order, right? Ensuring that you are clear about what is your niche, right? What do you bring to a potential partnership? Is there a specific market that you have the density and depth in that nobody else can provide? Or do you have certain operational capabilities based on the aircraft types or so on that again would be a value add to a partner? What is your USP going into that partnership? Number two, given that, what is your network gap that you're trying to fill? What are the routes you are operating today which are maybe not making it and you would like to have a partner on? What are the routes that have potential but you can maybe never operate because you don't have the right aircraft, but you'd love to be able to have a presence on those routes? Figuring those gaps out and then saying, well, for these gaps, who is the best partner who would help me fill that, right? So you do that planning ahead of time to say, these are my priority partners. It can't be, just throwing darts at a wall and hoping that any partner will sign up with you. It has to be a very, very considered process, because that's what you're taking in to the third step, right? You have to have a clear commercial strategy of what you are expecting from the partner and what the partner will expect from you. There will be a period of doing a joint business case and so on to ensure that this is value additive to both partners. And that will lead into what can sometimes be fairly hard negotiations. I say negotiation in good faith because much like in the mountain gorilla community, there will often be an alpha in the situation who will have more power. And you will quite often come across a situation where you feel that one party is being unreasonable, the rates being quoted are insanely high, and therefore both parties are going to have to negotiate in good faith to come to an agreement that works for both of them. That said, even if negotiations aren't quite going the way you'd want them to, it's still helpful to at least get the ball rolling, set up a baseline interline, and then leave some of those contentious discussions for a little bit later, or do it on a case-by-case basis, route-by-route basis. But getting moving is important. And finally, once all of that is agreed, then you can actually implement the partnership. Again, not as easy as make it sound with just 2 words up there. There's a lot of IT that goes into making it work, especially if it's anything more than just an interline. But that effort and investment needs to be made in the interest of being able to generate as much value as you would like to get from the partnership. It doesn't stop there, because once you've implemented the partnership, you have to keep monitoring whether it's actually adding value to you, right? Is the business case that you built with your partner in the beginning actually turning out right? Or do you need to tweak something, right? Is it the right partner? Are they the right schedules? Are these the right aircraft to be operating? Those are things that you will need to continuously fine-tune to ensure that you are getting as much value as you can from that partnership. So that's it. That's how we would suggest going about it. There is so much potential. There's a need and potential for partnerships in Africa, whether they be the more operational types in the beginning, which is the interlines and codeshares, all the way through to the more meaningful, deep relationships, which would be equity partnerships and joint ventures, and ideally mergers and acquisitions to really drive the consolidation that the industry needs in the medium term. Thank you. And I hope, I wish you all the best on your journey to be a mountain gorilla. Thank you.